Welcome and mahaloy day to all the viewers and fans of the Polynesianized podcast. Welcome to another live digital kava session at this Thursday evening here in Auckland, New Zealand. This is Mr. Aotearoa coming live to you guys all throughout the variety of platforms that you may be watching us, YouTube or X or Spotify, Instagram, Facebook. Happy to be here with you all. Tua, how's everything going, man?
Everything's going great. It's good to have you back, Mr. Aotearoa. He's been running the streets, running the streets of
Yes,
South
sir.
Auckland.
Yes, sir. And it's good, great to be here. And let's have another great talking story or talanoa session at the Kumete.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're excited for today, as you mentioned. Just a couple items. Always want to say before we get started, want to say thank you to all of our viewers, listeners, and supporters. We continue to, grow, get our exposure
Yes,
out
sir.
there. And right now, Facebook is just on fire right
It's
now. I
killing.
mean,
We're killing it on Facebook, man.
Facebook, and it's funny
Shit.
because it's like all of our social media, it's like they take turns, right? And it's funny
Mm,
how that works out because when we first started, it was TikTok. That was like our big wave maker. And then we went from TikTok to YouTube, and then from YouTube to Facebook, and then Facebook has just never slowed down.
correct.
That's actually where we get the majority of our views and comments. I think if I go off the top of my head, just one of our accounts, Tevita H Fales account, we're gonna hit 10,000 followers there probably in the next month, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we're averaging between 400 and 600,000 views every month, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
millions of views there. Our Polynesianized Facebook page is having uh, double digit growth the last 2 months, um, breaking over 1,000 followers there, getting tens of thousands of views. I think we average there around 40 to 60,000 views a month, and then you add everything else. I mean, I think we're pretty dang close to a million views a month when you add everything. The one area that we're trying to adjust to is YouTube. YouTube just updated their algorithm. We're trying
Yeah.
to figure that out. We still get the hours, the number of hours viewed, but where we've kind of taken a hit. So we're still getting our long form, so our podcast, our live digital kava sessions, we're still getting anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 hours a month. Where we're
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to figure out and navigate is on our shorts. We aren't getting as many views as we typically do, and that's not something that's unique to us.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, when YouTube changed their algorithm, about people were reporting it since January. It really didn't affect us until about maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. So we're going to
Good.
navigate through that. But the important thing is the content's out there, and
Yep.
people have that available to them whenever and however they choose. And so one of the things that we want to say thank you to, we continue to have subscribers who pay, right? Paid members
Nice.
on the YouTube
Nice.
channel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate that support. It really goes a long way. Every like, every share, every comment. And then one of our viewers brought up, we should bring it up in our discussions, is there's a hype button on YouTube that if you're watching us live, hit that hype button. It's a new feature that YouTube has added, and that makes a big difference for us as well. And if there's a comment, a question that's important to you, use the super chat. And then if you're a paying member, you
Yep.
get you get mentioned every time you make a comment here on the live digital conversations. Sounds like you were going to say something, Mr. Ateroa.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, even though I know it's probably because of the lawsuit that's kind of recently happened. Apparently, there's a big lawsuit in the LA against the social media companies to maybe better the or not make that. make it more change the algorithm or something. Could be something from that. Maybe that's what's kind of changed. I know it was a big deal. So I mean, no problem because you know, on YouTube, we just for the amount of views that's already happened, it's over 1 million views just on YouTube alone. So people are still searching and getting our content. So it's just part of the adapting and evolving of the platform.
Yeah,
So
no, 100%.
like what you
And
into it's always talking about history. So
not 100%. And the other thing I forgot to mention too, um, our audio version and even the video version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we have had tremendous growth there the last month and a
oh,
half.
that's
Uh,
good update. That's good update.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about, hundreds of downloads and listens every week. I forgot the number, but I want to say it's like 100 hours of consumption every week. So like people are
Not too
sitting in
shabby.
cars. Yeah, people are sitting in their cars, driving to or from work or whatever, and they're listening in. And I mean, it's a long way of saying thank you, everyone, for the support. Right? It's
Malo.
important for us. So just want to say thank you there. Now, what we have on the agenda today, actually, with Mr. Atearoa busy, we actually had a program that we were going to kind of talk through. But like Mr. Atearoa says,
Let's
always give the people what they want.
pivot. Let's pivot. Let's go. Let's go.
Eh?
Pivot. Keep your
Yeah.
head on
Well,
the swivel. You know that term
yeah.
in the football. Keep your head on the swivel because
Yeah. We're going to do
you'll
the
get a crackback.
crossover, do a juke, we're going to pivot, like Mr. Atearoa said. And there seems to be, what do you know, Masi, about this Akanesi kind of situation? I've seen a little bit on social media. That's a big part of, I think, why we're getting this flood of comments and
Okay.
and so forth in our social media inboxes. I'm not talking about our, there are some that I just kind of ignore on just the
Hmm.
comment section because we get tens of thousands. I can't get to all of them. It's just, if there's something that seems kind of interesting and it catches my attention, I'll respond here and there. It's good for the algorithm and stuff, but really can't get to anything. But messages, we pay a little more attention to emails and DMs and messages, and there's a lot more of this tension that's going on. Um, but what are you familiar with? It sounds like Akanesi. We've watched her
Yeah.
clips
We've
of her
I think
podcast of Kava.
yes.
We've kind of
Yeah.
given our two
We
cents,
touched on
but
that.
we
Correct.
never, took that overly seriously. But
Yeah.
there's this
This is
new
a recent one.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
what have you
Yeah.
heard about that?
Well, just like you, I don't really watch some of the content, just here and there of the highlights. And apparently, the big, let's just say, uproar that's kind of happening is her recent interview or episode about a Samoan gentleman, which is really good about him running a tattoo business, giving that up to follow Christ, which is great. But apparently, during that discussion, he shared about some interesting practice of some people regarding, regarding a woman's cycle, and then the guy having a
Yeah,
tattoo and getting involved in all of that, and that's kind of causing some, people to discuss and participate in that particular discussion, especially on I think Facebook is what's really kind of going viral regarding
mm,
that discussion with Akinesi's podcast thing. So that's kind of my interpretation. That's what's happening at the moment.
yeah. That's what I've kind of seen too. I've seen some clips. I watched like maybe the first 15 seconds of it, and I'm just like, well, everybody has a right to their, perspective, opinion. Just because someone says, and let's say it's true. Let's say what this gentleman is saying is true. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that's what everybody's doing out there. It's just, hey, people make choices, and that's what some people make.
Yeah.
And that's assuming it's true. It could not be true. Who knows? Anyways, there's been a huge influx of comments and, like, it's not that the topic is new. It's the same topic we've seen many times of,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, we're so disrespectful. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
cause problems out there. You don't know the history. Let me give you a lesson. And so we're going to walk through one of those messages first,
Let's go.
that you're going back and forth, and we're trying to be respectful. We're not going to share the individual's name. I'm going to
Yeah.
read their comments. We're going to just kind of respond to them. They even were kind enough to send us some videos of why they believe what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, this person that we're kind of choosing as an example, it's representative of many messages that we get, so we're just
And
using this
comments.
one.
Yeah.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
not new, so we're going to walk through that. We'll talk through it. And let's just start there. Let's just start with the message there, or the come of the messages that we received. So the first one is, there were some comments this individual made on our social media posts. We had made some responses, and their response was, these it was about Tongan historians who
Okay.
say Tonga comes from Haamoa and Samoa.
Okay.
And they say, these are your Tongan historians admitting Tonga came from Samoa. Bam. Even current queen says the same thing. Right? So let's start with
Let's check it out.
let's
Let's
start
check
with
out
that
these.
video.
Let's check out these receipts. Let's go.
Yes. We'll
Let's ver-
check out
let's
the receipts, as you said.
let's check them out. And that's what we encourage everybody to do. Somebody propose something, don't just take it face value. Let's do some
Yeah.
digging and some discussion about it. Let's go.
Absolutely. Let's add this to the table here. Let me know if you don't hear it, but let's get the first video in.
As a historian, I can call it's the traditional belief that we have that supernatural God, which his name was Tangaloa. We do believe he stays somewhere in Manua in the village of Fituta. And from there, we call him in Samoa Tangaloa Fatupunu. That means he's the creator.
Ia kangaloa whakupungu. Whakupungu lea sama whakukupuinga ia moku nge o Pasifika.
Ka motu nei, o motu uma o Tangaloa o ia lea sa fuafuaina I latu Samoa. Ia tatanunga na o mātou ia I nei stiu taloina. O motu Tangaloa motu.
E alu whapea kumukumu, langi kuakas, sa ngofele si o ngai, langi kualua, o rukis kumukumu o mo, langi kuako, se yo a langi kuai.
What we call the ninth heavens, the heavens are the mountains.
The Satangaloa being in Samoa was the creation of the Tui system, and the very first demigod child was the Tui Manua.
Tangaloa is the family name of the Tui Manua.
The Tuitonga lineage started from Samoa.
The Tuitonga, the Tuitonga, to be more specific, the Tuitonga lineage originally from Samoa, originally started from Samoa. The Tui Kanokupolu, interestingly, the Tui Kanokupolu dynasty as well, originally from Samoa. Tuitonga from Manua, Tui Kanokupolu from Upolu. Okay? And we don't have to hide that. It's not an embarrassment. Samoa was part of Tonga. Tonga was part of Samoa. When the Manua Empire fell, the Tuitonga Empire emerged. Out from that intermarriage, they brought their skills, their knowledge of how to run an empire. We added in our flavors into it, and that's how we had the Tuitonga.
But they were the hierarchy. They were the Eiki, came from Samoa. to Tonga.
What's your initial responses there, Mr. Aotearoa?
All right. Yeah. Like we've touched many times with this thing, and, we'll just keep going at it because, like I said, I think we tried to move towards to touch the Eastern Polynesia, but it keeps getting easier to break down that argument that Eastern Polynesia is very young, right? But every time we kind of touch there, our Samoan relatives keep bringing us back to keep talking about this, and then because they keep bringing this up, we're gonna keep talking about it until there is no argument. But we're gonna keep going with this. So I know there's that first part. So there's a couple parts or three parts that I'll talk about. The first part is the Samoan historians, right? Saying that Tangaloa is what one historian said supernatural. Is that correct, Tua?
Yeah.
Supernatural demigod kind of thing, right? We all we I take the stance of Tangaloa is not a god. It's a man. It's a title, correct? And the reason why that is um being a man because it was the founding father of Polynesia, right? And when over time and because of colonization, right? Because of the stories that Palangi's here, and then over time, because there's huge gaps, people take it as this is a godlike figure, and they can only remember more of the recent history, like the Tuitonga. Um, so see that's another one, and the reason, and so here's some evidence to kind of argue, like I've mentioned before, and we've actually strengthened our argument up to now to us since we first started the Polynesianized podcast. Tuitonga, the list and that's been presented by Tevita Fare, it is much longer than the Tui Manua, but the list that they have right now. And the Tui Manua list is how the problem with that is how do you verify if that is even accurate when you can't even find the mounds where they're exactly buried at, right? So if you take it from the last Tuitonga, Laufiritonga, to the last Tui Manua, which is a female, I don't recall her name, it doesn't add up. Then when you put the dates, Tuitonga is much older than the Tui Manua. So why would the Tangaloa go straight to a Tui Manua? That's another one because I know the Samoan historians were saying that, and even our the Tongan gentleman in that last part before we close mentioned about that. So that's my argument that that doesn't make sense, and I we haven't reached out to that gentleman. Maybe we will. We have tried to reach out to our other followers, Mahina and the other one, Kaliri, uh, to see if I assume they're the proponents of this belief to have come on so we can have a respectful discussion to break down and just see who is much more accurate of the history of Polynesia. So maybe I'll try to reach out to that gentleman, but it doesn't make sense. And then he says it came from Manua, from Samoa, but then they're not even older with the Tui line. And then now you presented to us when we broke down the word Tui from the oldest Samoan translation. Tui is a what? Tongan word. It's foreign
Tongan
within the
word.
Samoan dialect, right? So it's obviously not a Samoan word, and it makes sense because some of the recent translations of the Tui is very, I guess, a little bit confusing. There's different varieties of definition. It's not a singular definition of the Tui.
Yeah,
Um,
because it was never centralized power, right? You
never
have
centralized.
different. Yeah, it's
And then that gentleman, the Tongan professor that spoke earlier, he said that and here's my another thing that came to my mind, Dua. So why are we saying if we know Tonga Tapu and Tonga in general is the oldest settlement of Polynesia, in Hihifo, there's a place called Kanugpolu. Why are we saying that Tui Kanugpolu came from Upolu when it could have been people from Kanugpolu in Hihifo over time that went and settled Upolu and became Kanugpolu? Why are we saying that this whole people came from Upolu to become or create this Tui Kanugpolu? That's what I'm saying, because the correct the if we had to go with the correct language and the more closer language of Polynesian is the Tongan one, and Tongan being the oldest, wouldn't Karukpolu be the people that settled Upolu? Who knows? And then being named after Upolu, because
Yes.
that's what I'm thinking over there. So I'm just trying to understand what they say. The flesh of Upolu is that's not a reference to the main island of Upolu. Maybe it's the reference to Kanukpolu in Hihifo that went over to, or a lot of their descendants went over to Upolu and settled there and then named it after the place in Kanukpolu in Hihifo. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud why everyone's kind of referenced that, but they're not referencing the place Kanukpolu on the Hihifo side that's in Tongatapu. So that's kind of my thoughts there. It's very weak argument. Manua has a lot of flaws. A lot of them, it's not even close. You can't run. How can you run a unification empire when? And how can you use the skills? I know some of them say the skills and the knowledge when there wasn't any knowledge or skills to run. Uh, at least, at least, at least your archipelago, the closest islands,
Mussy,
even in
stop
your
being
area.
disrespectful. Stop being
Yeah.
disrespectful,
No, no,
Mussy.
no, no.
The, the
And
truth
let
might
me
hurt.
yes, and let me let the viewers know it's people who usually throw that argument of being saying it's too sacred or disrespectful. It's because they have the weak arguments. They don't know how to have a discussion. They don't know how to talk. They take things it's what happens when you put all your emotions from stories that maybe you've heard from your professors or even your families that maybe heard it from the Matai speeches and they think it's correct. And it's let me tell you, when they do a launga, it ain't always correct. Launga is
Mm-mm.
the malanga tua. And people's gotta you gotta have the capability and understanding of people use speeches to entertain, to make things match of what they're gonna deliver. And it's not always correct. And that's the weakness when you have oral history that's kind of always
The
tailored
only
to
thing, the only
the
when
only
you
thing.
say that's the only thing you got, it's
Yes,
because we appreciate oral history, but if
we
that's all you bring, it has some serious weaknesses.
yes, and then like I said, yes, we like oral history, but your credibility is your family lineage that you can add if and if you don't have maybe if you're just from a village that's well known just within your district, but it's not well known in all of Polynesia compared to lineages from somebody from Mu'a, right? It's a little different. And when you take a more oral history compared to a Tongan oral history, because Tonga was never colonized, you can give the benefit of the doubt that less, let's just say, less interruption or less confusion are less likely to happen because Tonga was never colonized. So that's kind of my thoughts there. Tua, I don't know if you had anything else.
Yes, I do. But real quick,
Hey,
UTOL
UTOL.
Malo says
Hello, man.
Malo Kautama. Thank you for being a paying member of the
Yes.
Polynesianized
Thank
podcast.
you for
We
your
go
support,
out of our
UTOL.
way. And he also says Malo ngawe lahi me hena fangatokawas mo ni mas 100%. Marie
Malo, UTOL. Appreciate Malo
pesete
Ipopoa
te awa
programa.
masi he CV ahon ni UTOL. Marie
Malo.
also Talangi
Hey.
8889 Malo Alpito. Appreciate it. Paying member
Appreciate your
of the
yes, appreciate your
Polynesianized
support,
podcast.
your constant support. Yeah.
So I want to start with let's start with Tangaloa, right? Like why Tangaloa gets this kind of like supernatural right? And we have to
Yes,
start,
mysterious. Yes,
yes, this
yes.
mysterious. So we have to remember, like in oral history in Tonga, Tangaloa is not a god, right? Now, are there pockets of Tongan oral history that say that? Yes. But when you go, like you were mentioning earlier, in certain lineages and in certain towns, Tangaloa is known as an individual, right? He's not
Mhm.
known as a quote unquote demigod or a god or the creator, right? Remember, we looked, was it whose record was it? It may have been Captain Cook's, that they they were saying that Tangaloa is the god of like craftiness, of building crafts, right? And there's and
Okay.
then there was Hikureo, who was the older brother, the greater god, right, of the skies and so forth. That's what happens when you're not close to the source of power, or many years away from when that person lived, and you kind of build it up in their head. Remember that one that one example we read about the Tongan guy who made Napoleon Tongan?
Bonaparte or something.
Yeah.
He
And
Tonganized the French
yeah,
name.
he
Yeah.
Tonganized and said, hey, if France was willing to accept it, Napoleon was born in the U.S. He was like, he was a French nun, and he for all his age, he was like crippled or whatever. Then there was a prophecy, and then they went from France to America, and then when they prophesied, then Napoleon stood up and showed his. See, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about when oral history gets out of control sometimes.
Mm.
Okay, we have nothing to really ground that story with, right? And but the reality is, like in Tonga, there is oral history. And what is the oral history? Like you mentioned, Masi, there's three founding fathers, right? And who are those? It is Tangaloa, it is Maui, and it's the Taula, right? Or the
Taula.
Loau, right? They're
Mm.
kind of combined together there. So according to Tevita Fale, when they first arrive, they arrive in the kind of this area right here, the Laulea area, Hokula. They go
Hokula.
from Ata. They first go to Ata, which is south of Tonga Tapu. Then they come here. They live there, and then after they get established, they break into three areas. What are the three areas? We'll start from the west, right?
Mhm.
Loau, or the Taula, goes to the west. Why? Because that's the spiritual direction of Pulotu. Everybody
Mhm.
says, hey, we gotta go find Pulotu. It's like Pulotu
Yeah.
is the spirit world. You'll
Yeah.
find it one day. You won't find it in Fiji. You won't find it
Mhm.
anywhere. You'll find it when life comes to an end. So that's
Mhm.
where Pulotu, that's where the Loa went to.
Mhm.
In New Toa, where we have the Ha'amonga, Amaui, that
Mhm.
is Lolofonua, that some people call Lalofonua, right? So people say, "Oh,
Yeah.
Maui lived in the underworld." Well, it's because that area was called Lalofonua or Lolofonua. That's where Maui and his clan established themselves, right? And what do we have as evidence for that?
Mhm.
The Ha'amonga Maui, right? Built by the Maui clan, and we have our last couple episodes. We've gone over how critical that is, right? You cannot say you're a navigating island or people if you don't have the capacity to track the seasons, which is directly tied to the trade winds, which tells you not just the trade winds in your southern hemisphere, but also the trade winds in the northern hemisphere. So if you want to go to Hawaii, you have to know the perfect timing of when to leave the southern hemisphere and when it's the best time to travel in the northern hemisphere. So you have that. Okay.
Mhm.
Then where do you have where Tangaloa lives? And we'll just zoom in. It's unfortunate. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate, but that's where this used to be a quarry. This used to be a quarry because it was the highest point on Tongatapu. It was a big rock. It's an elevated area. And that's where Tangaloa resided. It was called, see, to this day, the Tapuhia means you're not, no crime, no inappropriate actions was to happen in that area because it was sacred. That's where the Tangaloa title holder resided. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is the difference. Like we heard earlier in the beginning, Masi, in Haamoa, it was, oh, in the heavens, in the
The nine
mountains,
heavens.
right?
Yeah.
In the
Nine
nine
heavens.
heavens. And I'm like, okay, that's your oral history. We have physical locations, we have ruins that say this is where these people live. So not just Tangaloa, but we have ruins and locations that are tied to Maui,
Yep.
right? And then for the Lo'au and the Taula, they go to the west because that's the entrance into the spiritual realm. As far as I'm concerned, that is the most convincing story. And ruins tied to Tangaloa, Maui, and the Taula. Like, I don't know of anywhere else that kind of has that type of just not just the oral history, but ruins tied to that oral history.
Mm.
Any thoughts there
Yeah.
before I go into the next part I
Oh,
wanted to get
yeah.
into?
Yeah. No, and I wanted to add on also that it makes sense to me why our relatives in American Samoa and Samoa, they have to tie it to something mysterious and like a little bit out of out of this world kind of thing, because there's no archaeological evidence to suggest it is from Upolu, Savai, or Manua or Tutuila,
Yeah,
right? It's not in Haamoa. So they have to. So I understand why they have to make it a little like a fantasy, like a unicorn, a little
mythical.
bit
Yeah,
mythical, right? You're creating it because you can. It's easy to change it because it's something out there. There's nothing physical to suggest that your origins stem from this part of the island, right? So that's why it's mythical. It's a very like a legend, legend story creation, which is very open to a lot. I mean, we're open to some interpretation, but it's hard to do it when you have oral and archaeological evidence like the Langi, and even oral histories of Tangaloa first settlement, and then going from there transitioning to the Tuitonga. The Manua and their Tangaloa and even their Maui. We even have a archaeological evidence of the Maui. So that's why it's hard to make it such a mythical thing in Tonga, because it's a title that's tied to the
yeah,
Ha'amonga that was created by the Ha'amaui, right?
yes,
So Ha'amoa, I understand, because they have to make it like a mythical because they don't know, and it's easier to include it in, and that's what creates it in their speech, which makes it. And then when you have a lot of fa'alaves and a lot of responsibilities, and you embed it into your speech over time, it becomes like it is something that really happened, but it's not, because people think they've used it in so many speeches, but it's just a mythical thing that somebody wrote it on a book and they just include in their speeches. They think it's a real thing. So
yeah,
that's why that's another issue, and I understand why. And I just thought I'll just share with the viewers why it's so hard to even understand their origin of why Tangaloa, Maui, and even the Manua was a big deal, because it's a fantasy thing that they can't tie it to an archaeological evidence that can create a more clear understanding of understanding where they really came from. So, you know, like I mentioned before, to like, I don't know if a lot of, if you have Samoans, that's in their late 70s, 80s, even up to their 90s, you ask them how bad colonization happened, especially with the Germans and the British through New Zealand, happened. It was pretty bad, almost like a apartheid. So when you have people who had to change their traditional Samoan names to British and German names in order to get access to certain goods and also to even go to
I
education
did not
because that
know it was that bad. Like,
it was no, it was that bad. So Samoa has a history of that. So we imagine that history and then being interrupted greatly and you're trying to understand your origins, which is a huge gap. So that's why after after the independence and obviously that's when I'm pretty sure speeches were included. The great thing about Samoa, they were able to save the tattooing, which is still relevant because they've recovered it, and especially certain families were able to maintain it, and that's the great thing about the Samoans. Was it what do you call, like one village, like a you know it's not a unified, but it's certain districts that not everyone is following the same. So maybe some areas were heavily colonized than others, right?
little more
And
diversified.
diversified, and it's like um I can't think of the word right now, but it's a little bit broken because one you can literally go from one village to the other and have different set of rules from the others, and some rules will benefit more a village more than the other, and the other rules will benefit like foreign people who are trying to take or have influence more because they married certain families and they have access to more goods. So I just want to let the people know that's Samo, it was pretty heavy
Mm.
colonized. So that's that's the reason why there's a lot of gaps, and the speeches and stuff always sounds good, but they're just for entertainment and to make people laugh and flatter other people. So it's not always correct, and should question it. So that's just my thoughts there regarding that door.
Mm. Quick comment before we continue. Talangi 8889 paying member says Ata Island is my ancestors' land before King Tupo the first relocated the people to Ewa in 1864 due to slave trading in Peru. 100%. That's legitimate because
Yeah.
a lot of those people were taken in slave trading because it is a smaller island and it's really pretty isolated, right? Because it's the most southern point in the island. So it was, moved over there to Ewa because of the slave trading. And
Yes.
just to kind of tag on to what you're saying, Masi, remember, for those who follow us, we looked at a study of Samoan oral histories, and that was one of the trends that they found in the oral. I think they looked at over 200 oral stories, and what they found was a trend of whenever they talked about Samoa and Tonga, it was marriages, it was war, it was trade, it was traveling back and forth, which meant it was tied to like more actual events, right? But do you remember what happened when it shifted to Fiji?
Hmm.
Fiji became very mythical. It was always like these mythical stories of like, outlandish stories. And one of the conclusions was that's how they said it seems like what was understood in Samoa about Fiji was through interactions with Tonga, because there wasn't like, oh, this clan married to that clan or these guys traveled back and forth. It was secondhand knowledge and information, which always has a grain of truth, right? Like
Hmm.
like the video we saw, I spoke about Tangaloa. We all know Tangaloa existed. So it has a grain of truth in it, but then it gets woven and develops into a mythical level because it's many times it's secondhand, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of like what we're talking about. That's what the study showed is they said we come to the determination that the knowledge of Fiji in Samoa was secondhand through the Tongans, because when they look at Tongan oral history, it's the same as if the oral history with Samoa. They show, oh, this Tuitonga's daughter married to this individual in Fiji, and then we get the Tuilakepa, the Tuivakano, We get all these lines that come out of the Haafisi or whatever you want to call it, those strong ties with Fiji. In Tonga, in both directions, it's tied to very practical, very historical type of events, but that's not necessarily true. And I'm just using that as we're not just throwing this stuff up there. There are logical reasons to explain, like what you're saying, Masi, as to why that perception of Tangaloa and Maui would be mythical in all
Yeah.
these other places. But in Tonga, it's tied to concrete locations and ruins and history that just makes it 10,000 times more credible than others. So that's anything else on Tangaloa and Maui and those guys that kind of address the first half of that video.
Yeah, I have another thing I want to also touch. To there's another common saying that I've seen uh, Samoans also use to justify that. Uh, Part of the reason why they say Samoa is the origin, they use the term tala tau tonga I tala tofia o Samoa, meaning that Talatau could be like Tonga is such a warring thing, that Talatofi Samoa is more of like the Tofia Samoa that was called Tofia. But like that saying, it's very common use in speeches in Samoan, let's just say, interactions and cultural events. But that's a saying that it's probably a reference to. It doesn't mean that Samoa is the origin. That when they say Talatofi, it's just when it's a Talatofi of Samoa, more of a reference of Samoa gaining. It's a more recent term of Samoa having the independence of the Western powers, and Tonga, probably because Tonga was still fighting many times to maintain its sovereignty. And there is instances in Tongan history of actually, Kalaufonua Fekai had to probably was probably the most militarized Tuitonga.
Tuitonga,
It could be
yeah.
that I know of right now. Maybe there's more, but because Tuitonga used, in my understanding, because they did the large navigation knowledge and going any part in the Polynesian Empire and probably outside of that, reaching the Americas, Asia, and maybe to all the way to Papua New Guinea and Australia. That they relied on the family connections and that knowledge that people would want to marry in to it. But there was probably times because of maybe not traveling as much that and a lot of assassination attempts that Tonga, the Samoan version, has it like a Talatau, Tonga being a warring history compared to Samoa being Tofi, but that's a Tofi thing of meaning that they have their independence just because of under the outside of the
Yeah.
colonization. So
No,
that's
but
just me.
that's
I just thought I'll just reference that because that's a common saying that I've seen in a lot of the comments in our
yeah. But
in
see, this
our
is
episodes.
yeah, see, this is the thing that I don't understand sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I understand correctly, what you're saying is the Samoan perception on Tonga, it was warring, it was
The Talatau and
unstable.
Talatofi Samoa. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, right. Well, here's the problem with that, Mussy. Here's the real problem with that. That's not what that's not what Captain Cook and the first settlers, I mean, not the first settler, the first contact people who came to Tonga, like the in the 1600s, the first contact that they had with Tonga, and even Captain Cook's first contact. What was their first impression about Tonga? It was unusually peaceful and orderly compared to the other islands that they would see.
Yeah.
Right? That so number one, there's that problem, right? Number two, you aren't able to project power outside of your island group if you're constantly at war. Right? Like there's no question that, I mean, we looked at the studies and they say over and over and over again, there is only one polity in all of Polynesia and all of the Pacific that exerted its power outside of their group of islands, and that's Tatu Itonga. That is undisputed, not just from oral history, but from archaeological evidence, right? And let me ask you this, Masi. If a nation state is always at war, can they build monuments? Can they farm to a high degree? No, they
Knowledge.
can't. They can't.
Mm.
Because why? Go look at all the places that are constantly in war. You will not find developed cities. You will not find institutions that are established. Yet, what is the island group that has probably the largest and most consistent volume wise of ruins is Tongatapu, like on a massive scale. How are you going to build 100 acres of man-made land if you're fighting all the time?
Yeah.
Like, see, these are the things. See, the problem is I can understand why they say that, because they're referencing that small amount of time when Tupou the First was unifying Tonga. So that's very recent history. So they're like, oh, look, Tonga was in civil war. And I was
Correct.
like,
yeah.
True. That was true for a for a handful of years and 2-3 generations. But how did Tonga survive colonization? Was it because we were a warring state? No. How was Tonga able to unify? To me, the reason why we can say that that's an inaccurate description of Tonga throughout its history, because if you've been warring for thousands of years, you're not going to overnight unify and survive colonization if you've been fighting each other for thousands of years. The natural state is that not that case. And even when we read George Vason's accounts, it was so peaceful in Tonga that the Tongans who liked war got bored of staying in Tonga, and they would go to Fiji to have war there. So this is the kind of example of what we're talking about when you just kind of pick and choose the timing. And then surviving colonization is the ultimate answer of that. Why did Samoa get split between the United States and Germany? Because there were two warring clans on each side who were vying for power.
And the colonists chose each side to kind of see whoever indigenous or Samoan clan that would win, they get the first dibs, right? Kind of thing. So I mean that's kind of really what happened. The German side with one clan, and the British and another colonial power side with another, and that's typical. And Ha'amoa wasn't able to figure it out, but Tonga was able to figure it out because they were the ones doing it to the other the other islands, maybe with certain families having certain control. So it's an old game because Tonga was the central of the Polynesian Empire. So that's pretty simple, but it wasn't simple for those guys because it's much recent to have their recent autonomy during that time.
No, and 100%. And once again, people have an incorrect understanding of Tongan history. Everybody, who says that Tu'ikanuku oh, the Tu'ikanuku beat Laufiri Tonga and overcome the Tu'i as that could not be further from the truth. How is it if you are a warring state that the guy who has the highest power and influence that everyone recognized, that even Tupou the First in the Battle of Velata, remember, Maui Tegelangi said, the origin of tying the pig's feet and mouth was a representation of Tupou the First submission and recognition of Laufiri Tonga as the future Tu'i Tonga, saying, I will never raise a club or speak evil of you. And how do we know that materialized as true? When he united Tonga, he never went to Mu'a. He never went and challenged Laufiri Tonga. And that is, I think, politically smart for him. And also, that's what saved him from being destroyed in Ha'apai. You know,
Yeah.
if Laufidi Tonga really wanted to wipe him out, then it would have happened. And then one of the miracles of miracles is Laufidi Tonga gives Taufa'ahawa Taumafakava and says, Tatui Tonga ends with me. You are the one that's going to lead our people and unify us. That's not how warring people behave.
Mm.
So that's kind of like, to me, there's just so much overwhelming evidence on that.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
there's a comment here before we start turning a little bit more to the Tu'i Manua. And this is Joel. He's very active on our social media. And he
Malo
says,
soy
why,
fuerte.
Malo? He says, why do you continue to have Samoa in your mouth? Okay. And I want
It,
to, I didn't give this clarification earlier when we started this episode. When we started this episode, our focus was on Tevita Fales, archaeological, historical, astronomical work and research. Musi, did we ever go on any other podcast, any other social media page or account and say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong? Did we ever do that
no,
in
sir.
the
We just did
beginning?
our own thing. We just did our own thing.
And what happened? We were over here talking about Tongan history and Tongan oral history and astronomical knowledge, historical and
Mm.
cultural. And who are the people who were the first ones to come and try and correct us and try to tell us, you don't know your history, your facts are wrong, and they brought us all this evidence, and we're going through some of this evidence today. It was our Samoan brothers and sisters who were the first ones. And then now that we go through the evidence that they gave us and we said, Tu'i Manua, huh? Oh, the Tu'i word is Tongan?
Yeah.
That even the Samoans' most trusted dictionary says that, oh, the archaeological evidence of the Tu'i Manua's first residence
Mm-hmm.
says that it's only 500 years old. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then we also hear that there's oral history in Samoa that says Kaulfo Nua Fekai's mother was a Tu'i Manua Fefine. And like, this is like oral history
Mm-hmm.
that some of them got from Samoa, right? Like, what was the gentleman who shared that? Because he has Samoan blood. We all have Samoan blood. Like,
Yeah.
the one thing that I agreed in this video, Tonga was Samoa and Samoa was Tonga. There was no
Correct.
separation. That's the one thing we 100% agree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we disagree with is, where was the capital, right? And where was the origin? And every time we've looked at every example or evidence, it only strengthened the Tuitonga position, and it only strengthened the Tonga Tapu and Mua
Over
position.
time. Correct. Yeah.
So that's why, Joel, we always are talking about it, because number one, we don't say Samoa was an independent nation. We were all the same thing. And number two, it's because you guys keep coming to us. The here tonight's program is an exact example. We were going to talk about the Dawn raids, right? That's what we were going to talk about. But what happened? People got a little excited
That
with
was the plan.
Akanesi, and then everybody came and started messaging us. Our brothers and sisters from Ha'amoa were messaging us, and that's why. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yeah. No, just to say with the comment with Joe Teo, hey, Ha'amoa is part of Polynesia, man. I mean, it's like the sibling. You want sibling that living in the same house. So you're gonna have to talk about it. It's all one history. Unfortunately, Samoa didn't have its history all by itself. It was all interconnected. So that's that. But Dua, I wanted to touch. What's your thoughts on what I said about maybe you can zoom in on the Kanukupolu on that Hifo side. If we do have people who have origins and strong connection to Kanukupolu, maybe some of the origin is is that more of a recent term? But like I know there's right there in Hifo. Yep, it's like close to Hatafu. is there any anyone out there that kind of has the history that maybe the reference of the flesh is from that place, or that people that went and settled Upolu, and just over time it just called Upolu instead of Kanukpolu? Because
Mm.
that's my thing. I want to just share on, because Tonga already has a Kanukpolu, and people keep referencing the Tui Kanukpolu is a reference to the Upolu. I know they reference that to the island, but because that's where the Ngata's wife comes in, and they create, and they call it the flesh of Upolu. But we always mention with the whole traveling back and forth, you know, Ngata's wife could have came from Kalupolu, and they probably the majority settled there, and they just called it a reference to Kalupolu to Tongatapu, and that's where the name Upolu kind of came
Yeah,
from. But I don't think it's the I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I haven't heard anyone talk about it, but why is the Upolu reference to that island when we have a Upolu on Tongatapu? That's a reference probably to Tongatapu instead of the island of Upolu. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? I don't know. That
yeah,
I
that's
just
a
thought of
good
it just when we were
question.
talking about it.
I had just always assumed that they named it that, like that's a recent name, but that could
Hmm.
be an old name. I don't know. I
Okay.
honestly don't know the answer to that question, but that's a fair question to ask, and we can
Yeah.
ask people because
Because
it's.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, because if it's a recent name, wouldn't you just say Upolu, right? Why would you have to say Upolu? I don't know. I'm just saying. Wouldn't you
Yeah,
just name it after the? Because if it's much recent, if Upolu's always been that name, Upolu Island, wouldn't you want to just call it Upolu Village instead of Upolu? I don't know, but it'll be better if we do have somebody. Maybe this episode, if people who are much closer to that area, and maybe origins or founder families of Upolu can maybe share some details on that. But that's just my question. Open to everybody. But yeah, sorry, Tu, I can go ahead.
no, no, no,
Mm,
no, no.
sharing.
That's a fair question. Anyone who has any information on that, that would be great. That would be greatly appreciated. So and the other thing too is, and we we've asked a couple people on why Savaii is called Savaii in Samoa. We haven't really
Mm.
gotten a good answer. From our
It's only
perspective,
us.
yes,
It's
that's
only
from our
us from
yeah,
Vaihi. Yeah.
yes, right. Is we say it's like the reason why you're called Savaii is because that's in reference
The old
to
name.
Vaiki, to where
Yeah.
we come from,
Yeah.
right? And so for Tongans, we say we come from Vaihi, and people try to say, oh, well, that means Savaii. And it's like, no, because we say Vaihi is the far, far away motherland. Savaii is not far, far away. Savaii is like your next door neighbor. So you
Yeah.
wouldn't say
Yeah.
the far, far away land. And so, and it's just interesting that that is a name that's found throughout Polynesia and different
Mm.
areas. But for Tongans, they say that is our motherland. That is the far, far away land that we come from. So it's interesting there. That's another interesting thing. And then, like we talked about the other part, maybe that's the end of that discussion on that
Okay.
video is, dude, the tui manua, guys, there is little to no evidence for that. The word tui, you can't say that the tui manua is older and then at the same time say the word tui is a Tongan word that
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
from Tonga, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can't say that the Tui Manua is where the Tui Tonga came from when all the archaeological evidence for the Tui Manua says it's 500 years old, right? Like there's little to no evidence for that. And if all you have is oral history, then your oral history is almost only as good as another person's oral history. Couple comments here real quick.
Okay.
Mel,
Oh, Mel,
Malo,
Malo,
Malo, she says Malo Tua and Mr. Aotearoa.
Malo. Thank you for
Mel
your
will
support.
always have a special place here on the Polynesianized podcast as our very first paying member, subscriber, paying member on the podcast. So always,
It's no, it's like a was it nostalgia? When you remember
yes,
you remember the first time you had ice cream. You remember the first time you were able to ride a bike without the training wheels. All these things, all these things. You remember your first fight. So looks like Mel is our special memory in the Polynesian Eyes
Yes.
history. Polynesian
Yeah,
Eyes
and
podcast
Mel
history.
has done some great work. We did an episode on some of her research, and actually, it was from her work that this idea of like regional hubs, because the work she did on Tokelau, and it made sense why we would call Tokelau kind of like the north. And when you look at the trade winds, Tokelau was like the hub for the
Hmm.
northern and part of the eastern part of Polynesia, and
Hmm.
that seemed to play an important role there. Hey,
Okay.
this is also a first. First off, Slick
Hey, Slick
Rick,
Rick,
thank
Malo.
you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it, Slick Rick.
And he said, member for 2 months. Malo Alpito.
Appreciate it,
Really
Slick Rick.
appreciate that. So Malo Alpito Slick Rick. Um, so let's go to the next comment from our Samoan brother. You right? So that was the one about your Tongan historians.
Hmm.
And so here's the next couple comments that he sent. And like I mentioned earlier, we're not going to mention his name. We're
Yeah.
we're being respectful here. He says, "Tell me, why are your Tongan dances sung in Samoan?" Yup, please answer. My teacher is Professor David Wallace with a doctorate degree in Polynesian history. Even Nainoa Thompson, lead navigator of the Voyager Hokulea, said upon landing in Samoa, stated this is where it all began. Samoa is known as the Navigator's Island. Polynesians believe that their spirits go back to the motherland. Samoa doesn't believe that their spirits go back because it is the motherland. Okay. Any comments on that, Mr. Ateroa?
Yeah, yeah. Few comments. Mentioned with the, I'm not too sure. He needs to go in detail with the Taulunga saying it's Samoan. There is some reference with a different tone, especially Mariner. People coming from Ha'amoa when they came to Ha'apai during Finau Ulukalala. But that's I don't think it was a huge difference to the Tongan language now because everyone understood each other, even up
Even
to
the
the point
Hawaiians, even the
even the
Hawaiians.
Hawaiians. So, it's is it changed to what it is now? Oh yeah, it's changed now because colonization happened, and that's kind of really made us a lot different and set apart in a big way. And but the language wise, I mean, there was probably certain words, certain tones, because it's a reference to a specific district or village in a particular island that can have a different nuance. But overall, it was really the same. So that's kind of my comment there with the Ha'amoa being the language um, used for Taolunga. So because to me, the Taolunga, like what Mirika, from my personal opinion, Mika mentioned Taolunga seems like it had a lot of variety, and there is a different Taolunga for certain, maybe for certain people, but you know, all I do know is the the Pushiaki family is the same family that Queen Salote came to Mua to kind of understand more of the traditional dances, and it was part of the revival of Tongan, um, let's just say, dances and even music. So because that was the closest to the Tuitonga, and you're talking about in all of Polynesia, which part of Polynesia had the more grand events and entertainment in all of Polynesia? It was happening in Mua, right? We're the closest people that live close to the Tuitonga that had responsibility. So that was my take, and it was an awesome interview with Mirika Pushiaki. So that's just my thoughts there. He mentioned about Nainoa Thompson mentioning that. Like, I'm just assuming, Nainoa used the knowledge of Micronesian
That's
to
what I was.
navigate. I don't know if he knew that. And here's another one. Here's another one to my brother that was messaging us to you know who built the Hokudea? To my knowledge is Tuyone Pulotu, who is from Tonga. Why was he able to build that boat? Because he's probably I don't know. Is there anybody that's been building navigation boats? The only ones I know have been Tongans that's building these traditional boats and actually sailing and withstanding the waves in the most traditional way. And there's Tuyone Pulotu that's still alive,
Master carver.
and
Yeah.
Master Carver, man, he's 80 something still going. Bless him. He is a treasure of Polynesia, not just to Tonga, but to all of Polynesia. And that Fehoko guy in Tonga, he's based
Mhm.
there. Apparently, he built some boats and he's kind of sailed throughout the Tongan archipelago, maybe even gone to New Zealand. But I mean, that's what I that's my thing. I mean, he sold it using Micronesian knowledge. Hey, that's fine. He was just trying to get there. We understand the position the Hawaiians were in, really kind of lost and trying to find something to grab a hold to rediscover their history. So Nainoa, I'm just trying to be respectful. I don't know if Nainoa knew about Tonga because he only knew places that were colonized, and he was able just to retrieve the knowledge where he could. Micronesia, I believe, is under what the United States, to my knowledge, was part of the territory until they got independence or what. And then he knew Samoa and saying this is the found land because he found some literature and maybe saw Tupaya mention that in his journey with Captain Cook and saying that's the land. And Tupaya maybe mentioned that because that's probably where his clan came from. But we all know that Savai and Upolu all came from uh, from Tonga because that was the migration, right? That was the migration
Yes.
from Atla to Tonga Tapu, Tonga and Ewa, and then going up that way to Ha'apai and Bava'u, and then kind of Samoa being like the place to spread to Eastern
Yeah.
Polynesia and all of Polynesia, and then going to Hawaii. So that's just my thoughts there. Nainoa's, and you gotta, man, and I want people to break it down. Nainoa's goal was just to get whatever knowledge is to just say and prove to the people that we were navigational people through the seas going from Hawaii to Tahiti. That was his goal. I don't think he was trying to get things right with, saying this is the place and think this is the place he knew because from Hawaii to Tahiti and then to Samoa, that's kind of all he knew. And those are the places he probably couldn't get access to materials to read upon. And
Can't blame him for
he's
that.
can't blame for that, and he did his job. And if he was to still have the energy to learn more, um, he would learn. He would learn something different, but he would learn that the last people to actually, let me guess, use Polynesian navigational method and a Polynesian
Mhm.
boat built, it was the Tongans up into the
Yes.
1800s. No one else was
Well, and
traveling the vast oceans. So
that's the
I don't know.
thing.
That's a long answer to that message. Tua, I don't know if you
No,
had a
no,
different take
no.
or anything else.
It's slightly different, but Talangi, paying member of the Polynesian Night podcast, says Hawaii is just a baby compared to Tonga. Age-wise, very true, right? Um, Hard to argue, Mussy, when we have David Burley on the podcast, and he's done all the genetic and the archaeological work, and he can say, I can. He even wrote a book and put his name on it and
Yes.
said Tonga is the birthplace of Polynesia, and he can track it starting from Tonga Tapu, moving up into Ha'apai, and then going up to Samoa. Like this is why we say the evidence is like it doesn't matter in which direction we look.
Mm,
The evidence is overwhelming. Not
yeah.
just the oral history, not just the genetic history, but even the example that you mentioned, Masi, about international travel. In modern day international travel, there was only one group when the Europeans came that was still doing it.
Yeah.
and it was the Tongans. The Tongans are the
Hmm.
only one that are documented. It actually was happening. Like the Europeans documented it. Tongans were going to Samoa. Tongans were going to Uvea, Futuna, Fiji.
Yep.
Document that's international travel. We don't hear of a Samoan ship being documented going to anywhere. We don't hear
No.
of Tahitians, right?
Yeah.
Documented. Oh, Tahitian ship showed up at in Samoa or showed up in Fiji, right? We don't have Fijian ships showing up anywhere else. It is that's what I'm saying. It's beyond a doubt that the international navigators by today's standards, oral history overwhelming. You look at the Ha'amonga and its role in not just tracking the seasons and letting you know when to travel, but the Ha'amonga in the sky and the role it plays
Mm.
in letting you know how to travel internationally. Guys, let me throw this out there. We are exhausted of asking people who say we are wrong. We are exhausted of asking people if you have evidence to prove another place as the center, as the origin,
Yes,
you
we
are more
welcome
than
it. Come
welcome to
on.
come.
Let's go.
You
If we're
know?
so wrong, come on.
Exactly. And yet, I in many ways I don't blame you because I was like, man, even I would be, man, with all that evidence, kind of hard. Like I don't know what you're gonna come with, which is
Yeah.
makes me even more interested. Hey, come because I
Yeah.
don't know what you're gonna come with because
No,
I
no,
just
and
can't think of anything right now.
yeah, no, no, and just to add, like when we welcome all viewers, our content is definitely being consumed by a lot of people. Just
Yes,
YouTube, we're over a million. The Facebook is thousands every month, or even weeks.
hundreds of
Things are
thousands of views
hundreds
every
of
month.
thousands. So obviously, people have saw our position, and there's still nothing. So that's why we're sharing it. We're very comfortable to please prove us wrong, or come with
Yeah,
something. Just come with something that we're incorrect. Because, like I said, we've been doing this for a minute now, and it's getting to everyone's phones, TVs, and computer screens. But there's still no takers. So
yeah.
yeah.
All right, let's go to the next comment. Man, this is we're spending a good bit of time. We'll try and speed this up so because we do have a second half of this.
Okay.
The next comment says, my professor stated that Samoa has the oldest culture in Polynesia. Tu ikano kupolu. Do you upolu? The ancient name of Tahiti is Upolu and Savaii. King Kalakaua, in his book Hawaii Myths and Legends, I'm assuming that was supposed to be legends, stated that all of Polynesia traces back to Samoa, even their monarchies. Kim Kamehameha first came out of Pili, Ka'aea of Upolu, Samoa, a direct descendant of the Tangaloa. In fact, he was called Tangaloa. You pick or choose what you want. Oh, let's stop right there. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yes. I mean, yeah, I've heard of that statement before of a island in Tahiti called Upolu. But guess what? There's another island in Tahiti also called Vava'utu before it changed its name. And and there's many places even in Tonga today that have references to Tahiti and Cook Islands in that part of the world. And then when they say the monarchy, the founder is in Samoa of Polynesia, that how help me make it make sense when we all know that the Tui, the Maria Toa, and all those titles, they're not as old as the Tui Tonga, even the Tui Manua. Like, so, I mean, it's very confusing. And that's what happens. That, when it's so confusing, that's what happens when you've been colonized. There's a lot of what's the word? Interference with the true history, because obviously they didn't last long, because those, obviously Ha'amo was barely to get, come alive from the being colonized twice by Britain and Germany, Ha'amoa America. American Samoa is still colonized. Hawaii is, I know there's some people still trying to fight for independence, but even when you get independence, that's still going to be heavily colonized place. So Tahiti, I go to Tahiti. I've gone to Tahiti twice. I'm telling you, it's like little Paris. It's a very strong French bread. They instead of eating taro, they're eating the baguette. I
And
just
the
learned that word,
croissant.
croissant. So I mean, see, it's how I'm just saying, guys. I mean, it's gonna be hard to rediscover and relearn all these true events, but I don't know why they're not looking into Tonga, the uninterrupted from the beginning to our monarchy now. That is, and you stated to many multiple times, the longest active monarchy in the world. So, you
Yeah.
know, that's that. It is what it is. What it is. So I'm confused with that comment, and it's almost like I'm giving another comment to try to look into that and research that. I've already researched that, and it does. It's incorrect. So am I gonna believe the Kalakaua or Tupoda first? Give me Tupoda first over Kalakaua, King Kalakaua, or the Kamehameha line and stuff. So that's just my thoughts there. I don't know if you had anything
Yeah.
else, Tua.
I'm gonna ask AI a quick question here. And then I'm gonna
Is it
frame
Grok?
something.
Are you going to
No,
Grok, Tua?
we're just gonna use Gemini
Mm-hmm.
because Gemini was open here. Okay. So it says here Polynesians first arrived between somewhere around the 1300s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's say there, but 1000 to AD to the 1300s. Okay. Everyone is relatively consensus that the Tuitonga was at its peak between the 1300s and the 1500s. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how is it that Tuimanua was the one doing all this stuff when supposedly the Tuimanua, if it's true, the Tuimanua happened like this is the comment we always get. The reason why you can't find any evidence on the Tuimanua is because it's so old. It's
So
so
sacred.
old.
It's
It's so
those are the two,
sacred.
Tua. Sacred and old. It's like, come on, stop it,
Okay.
stop it,
So
stop it.
what we invite people is just sit there and just think about this, right? If and we know that that Hawaii, Tahiti were the last ones to be
Yeah,
colonized,
very, very, very recent.
very
Yes.
recent, right?
Yeah.
Now help me make sense of it was the Tuimanua and Tangaloa who settled Hawaii when the Tuitonga possibly was already in power in the BCs and the Tangaloa ended in the BCs. Please, guys, like just take 5 seconds. Just take 5 seconds and think about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Does that really make sense? I don't know. There's at least some questions there. How is it? How is it we're gonna say everything originated from Ha'amoa and that the Hawaiians are saying we come from Ha'amoa, which we could say that's possibly true. We are not against that Samoa was a launching pad into Eastern Polynesia. We're not against that, right? And you have to
Yeah.
imagine that just like in the Roman Empire, nobody really wanted to go to the furthest outpost to be the
Mm-hmm.
governor. Just like Pontius Pilate, he didn't want to be the most powerful guy in Israel. That was like the worst assignment you got. Why? Because you're so far away from Rome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like everybody wanted the assignments that were somewhat the closer you were to Rome, the better the assignment because there's more power, there's more influence. You're
Mm-hmm.
not out in the boonies. So you would imagine that's why they did the studies in La Paja is the highest density of titles, and
Mm-hmm.
that is usually an evidence of power. higher or greater magnitude of power. So you have I wouldn't be against of someone in Haamoa going and settling Hawaii or Tahiti. Not against that. When we just look at other empires, it's rare that someone who has high power and influence in the capital will say, I want to go to the outskirts of the empire. That's
Yeah.
not the preferred assignment, right? The preferred assignment is how close can I stay to the seat of power in Tonga? Like that's the preference. So Kamehameha or the Hawaiians, we don't argue that. But I just think it's funny. Like if you just take 5 seconds and you think of the chronological timing of the
Mm,
settlement of Polynesians in Eastern Polynesia, that you can say something there just doesn't make sense. And even if
yeah.
you were to say, okay, well, who was probably the most dominant power in the 1300s and in the 1000 AD? There's really no doubt it's the Tuitonga. So
Hmm.
really hard. Once again, every time you try to kind of sidestep reality, reality just smacks you in the face and
Yeah.
says, "Hey, slow down." Any thoughts
Yeah.
before I go to comments, Masi?
Yeah, no, no, and like I said, I've gone to Tahiti and I've seen maps of the octopus being in Tahiti, saying that how it's spread all over to Polynesia. I just want to let everyone know the French. That's the idea the French wanna promote. When you're colonized, they'll promote their version. They could care less what the American Samoas is promoting. They could care less what the German Samoans were promoting. They could care less what the the British, also the British Cook Islands were doing, and the new way they were doing their own version, saying that they were the origin. But we all know it's common sense. If you just look at the data now, Tahiti is very recent compared to Ha'amoa, and then Ha'amoa is not as old as Tonga. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
the Europeans were at play with their colonial interests, saying their version of history, and they've kind of said, we've kind of broke it down with the Laiatea being probably the place of significant when the Tu'itonga didn't require the Polynesian empire to all come to Tongatapu for the meeting of the Inasi and the Polo Polo twice a year, and they set up regional um,
hubs,
regional hubs. And Laiatea in Tahiti, in the archipelago of Tahiti, that was the hub. But when you're colonized and the French say no, that's not true. You were the origin of Polynesia. You see, because that's what they're saying, and that's the French and the colonial narrative that is pushing through. And most of our Polynesian people who are not, you know, mixed ancestry, and their French parents or their British parents say this is the way, and then some of their traditional ones say this is the way, and they get mixed up, and that's why there's a lot of confusion, and that's all part of the colonization. So that's just my thoughts there, Tua.
no, 100%. So here's a couple comments here from our Slick Rick, paying member of the Polynesian Ice podcast. Is Samoan, Filipino, Hawaiians claim Kamehameha came from the line of Pili, but the real Hawaiians say Pili came from Tahiti. This is the problem when you only have oral histories, right?
Mm, mm.
So who are we supposed to believe here? Who has quote unquote more evidence? Well, it could be
Ooh,
from Samoa or is he from Tahiti? It's oral history. That's one of the challenges with oral history. What it seems like something clicking
yeah.
over there.
No, no, Slick Rick, just with that comment, kind of sparked my mind here, because isn't there a place called Pili in Tongatapu?
Yes,
Do you
yes,
know any
close.
kind of history or what's Tua? All
No, I
right. Well, that's
don't.
another.
That's the name. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's another open questions for anyone in that Pili area. I mean, Kamehameha. I'm just putting it to maybe he came from Pili, but they're thinking it came. Maybe he stopped over in Haamoa, but there's a Pili in Tongatapu, and apparently Kamehameha was one of the few. He didn't do it how the Tuitonga way, because maybe he's been kind of isolated. But if you think about it, Kamehameha grew up in Kona, Tonga. He says he came from Pili, which is an area in that close, Nuku'alofa
Yeah,
area. There's a place called Pili there. So, I'm seeing some correlation and stuff that maybe, and then we all know of Kamehameha, Kona, Tonga, reference to Tonga, Pili, probably Pili is a reference to Tonga Tapu. They say it came from Ha'amoa, and maybe there's Pili had some relatives in Ha'amoa, but the origin is from Tonga Tapu, something like that. And I'm just trying to put it together. And then Kamehameha is one of the few Hawaiians that united the all of the archipelago. He did it maybe the Kaufonua Fekai way of just militarizing, just demolishing, you know,
everyone out there.
people and even relatives, right? And to consolidate power. So I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here with Slick Rick's comment, but that's what I'm just saying. If
So
anyone
you
has more closer ties to Pili that maybe can touch on that, that'll be awesome with the some of its origin history.
so you see this Filipino Hawaiians here. Talangi, paying member of the podcast, says, "How the heck is Filipinos even having a saying with Polynesians?" This is what happens when you get confused. Yeah, when everybody gets to throw in their 2 cents. Hey, the Filipinos like, you guys are confused anyway. Let me throw my two lumpias into this lao lao.
Might as well. Hey, and then with that theory of with Taiwan, the Filipinos say we're closer to Taiwan. We've got to have some
Yeah,
Polynesian
yeah.
in
You
there.
guys come from us. We're closer to Taiwan than you guys. Yeah, at this point, no, and that's the thing. I mean, if you just think about it, it really just 2 seconds of thinking can go a really long way. Um, let me see here. He goes on to say, your first king, Aho'eitu. Who's your first king? Question mark. It was Aho'eitu out of Samoan Tangaloa line from Manua. By the way, all other Polynesian languages derived from Samoa. There's different theories
Mhm.
of where Polynesians came from, like Thor Heyerdahl's theory of the Kontiki. You're narrow minded and believe in everything you read, then ground your beliefs in it. Do Tonga have a big pyramid like Samoa? The Pulemele, right? The Pulemele,
Mhm.
not the Pulemele. Oh my gosh, so scary. Your
The
Tongan
the the
historian
one,
said,
yeah.
go ahead,
No,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Mas.
Go ahead, Dua. Finish. You
Oh,
can finish the
yeah.
comment.
So he
Finish it.
says, your Tongan historian said to be Tongans, don't be shamed. Samoa goes back 3,000 years. Then answer me this. Why Tawalunga dances sung in Samoan? Micronesians tell stories of Tangaloa of Samoa in Melanesia too. Are you a professor? King Kalakaua of Hawaii wrote in his book Hawaii Myths and Legends. I'm assuming that's legends. All of Polynesia traces back to Samoa, even their monarchies. My grandma is half Tongan and half Samoan. Don't be ashamed.
Okay. Okay.
What are your thoughts,
Well, I
Mr. Atera?
well he's kind of restating some of the stuff that we've already answered with the Tui Manua. It's the Tui Manua is like I said, it's not even close with how can the Tui Tonga come from Tui Manua when Tui Manua is a lot younger, right? And the word Tui is very because it's Tongan. We can confirm that. We're gonna say that as a fact because it is a Tongan word. So obviously the Tui Manua came from the Tui Tonga. That's where it's heading to, right? And settled in Manua. So that is a title given from the Tui Tonga unless somebody tells us otherwise. So Tui is a Tongan word because it was a Tui Tonga. And what's some other questions? He said we already touched on the Samoan uh song sung in
The
the
pyramid,
Taurunga.
the scary Pulemele.
Hey, here's another one, and that's why I'm gonna throw another question. Please break down what pule Malay means because I've asked all the Samoans I know, and they can't even break it down. You want to know why? It's because they don't even know. It's now they're gonna create the pule Malay like this mythical thing, like they've done with Tangaloa and the history of the origin of the Tui
Is
Manua.
is that the
Mythical
ninth
thing.
heaven?
It's the 10th heaven with the
Is that-
Purimere. 10th heaven. So that's my thoughts. We've already got a video of people who actually live in the area that even said this is the they've always know this as the Pa Tonga reference to the Tui Tonga would stay in this area. So like I said, no one has been able to even break down the words. So but we're helping discover the reason why the
See?
Purimele is a place where the Tuitonga stays, and that's what happens when you no, this is the thing when you don't know the origin. They had somebody come and just throw in that word, and even the locals don't even know what Purimele means. They're still trying to figure it out. So
No,
yeah,
and
what
this
were you
is
gonna say, Tua?
no Masi. This is a prime example. The Pule Malay is a prime example of what you were talking about earlier. When you're so far away from the history and the origin that you just make stuff up. You just make it up, just like these academics who when you know these
Yeah.
academics in New Zealand and so places, of course they're gonna be like, oh, you're my professor with a PhD.
Mm.
You believe Samoa is the origin? Okay, I'm gonna write my
Yeah,
paper.
yeah,
Samoa
because
is
I
the
don't know.
origin.
How can you hold somebody right, Tua, right? How can you hold somebody accountable when you don't even know sure yourself what the truth is? So you're gonna let people just say whatever and just take it what it
Yeah,
is,
and you
right?
go with it. I mean, and here's a prime example: Pule Malay. Nobody knows what it means, right?
Mm,
Like even remember, Matsi, we watched that video and the two ladies who grew up there, and it's like, what do you know about Pule Malay? And they both go,
mm,
and they're speaking in Samoa, and they say, yeah, we grew up here. We've never heard that word before.
mm,
We have no idea what it is, and it sounds
mm.
like to me, Matsi, you've asked people, other
I've
people,
asked it
like Samoans, like,
myself.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, this is what happens. Who was doing the initial studies and the work was probably some academic, possibly even a palangi, who's like, oh, we're just gonna call it the Pule Malay. When it's like, well, if you go talk to the people who grew up here, they will say, hey, as I'm doing the archaeological work, what's the name of this mountain? Oh, it's the Patonga. Yeah, we don't like that. We don't. And who used to live on the top of this mountain? Oh, the Tuitonga. When the Tuitonga. Yeah. We don't like that either.
Mm,
Scratch the Patonga. Let's well, if we name it something else, it might be tied to the history, then it can be
ah,
proven wrong. Let's come up with something. Let's come up with a myth. Let's come up with a
mm.
story so
And
that
it's always myth. It's
you cannot argue against it.
yes. Yeah, it's like another myth. Pulimbele, it's almost like they're creating like that, like I mentioned earlier. It's like a mythical fantasy thing that you can't really pinpoint it to the details of where it derived from and try to unre they try to make it it's almost hey Tua, you've kind of touched on it. It's kind of like how you know you have people try to record what what Jesus is doing on earth, but over time, right? The actual person who actually recorded, because it's gone to throw to so many hands, there's little, it's almost like it's changed, and it's almost like it's kind of it's not there that you can actually grab it or like the practical understand the practicality of this event occurring. There's like there's
Yeah.
because there's different versions of when the Bible is going through, it's kind of the same thing. It's almost like there's so many versions, and then they just create this thing that's like a little bit out of reach and out of touch, that it's kind of like what you mentioned, mythical. It's easy to throw whatever you can, form it to however you want in your imagination, because it's not grounded that something you can physically understand the history behind it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, and that's the thing. And then you said, and it's fueled by emotion, right? It's fueled by emotion. Here's another one.
mhm,
By the way, I'm a descendant of Tangaloa. My great grandmother is Helen Talanoa or Tangaloa of Upolu. Oh, I probably shouldn't have
okay,
said the name. I apologize.
mhm,
Uh, of Faleula village. She's also the Malietoa line. This is another common one we get. You are a commoner. Commoners seem to be rebellious in accepting Tonga coming from Samoa, but your queen does. Any thoughts, Mr. Aotearoa, you commoner? What the heck are you doing, Mr. Aotearoa?
Is he trying to tell us to state our family connections to right?
Well, yes. But here's the funny thing, right, Masi?
Yeah.
Does he doesn't seem to understand that being a descendant of Tangaloa is not necessarily special because the Tangaloa was marrying multiple wives.
Yeah.
At this point,
Well,
almost
and
everyone
here,
is descendant of Tangaloa.
yeah. Well, let me just say, some people who just wanna go up the food chain, try to take a very popular name and thinking that's gonna get them the recognition. But obviously, it's not just because you take a name; it's because you gotta have the blood connection to that family of Tangaloa. So obviously, maybe they had something that was off illegitimate or whatever, and just taking the name to get somewhere. But that doesn't mean that it makes you
Well,
royalty.
and remember,
If
Shas
any,
Ilayu told us the story of how the Tangaloa title was given to Samoa. I don't know if you've heard that story before, Masi.
no, what is it?
So supposedly, and this is what I find funny about a lot of our brothers and sisters in Samoa. A lot of their stories, like their oral history, it always involves like women, right? Which kind of makes sense because like the Tuimanu Fefine. So just like
Yeah.
Tonga Fusi Fonua was, when you decode their oral history on that, he was basically betrayed by his wife, right? With Maui and them, and she tells them the hook, right? But the
Hmm.
oral history of how the Tangaloa title got to Samoa from Chelsea Ilayu was Tangaloa liked the wife of a guy in Samoa, and he gave an exchange. The exchange was, if I can have your wife, you get the title of Tangaloa. And I was like, how does that work? How does that work? So if that, and that's probably one of multiple versions of it, but that was one that Chelsea Ilayu shared with us. And it says,
Hmm.
so that's how the Tangaloa name got to Samoa. It's kind of funny. Like, thank goodness oral histories are just stories and not always validated. But
Yeah.
I found that to be kind of funny there. And any thoughts before I go to the next one?
No, I mean, I know they've used that argument multiple times, saying there's Tangaloa families that's in Samoa, but we all know that that's Tangaloa. It's a famous name, but just because you've taken the name doesn't make you have the correct. You can be whatever name. Like anyone can get a name in these days. You can get a Tangaloa, but that the Tangaloa it's if you understand Polynesian history, well, what we've presented, that was the name of the founding father, and it's transitioned the authority to the Tuitonga, just like how the Tuitonga's name is memorable and it's long lasting throughout the years, but it's transitioned over to the Tupo family. So I mean, people's gotta understand the nuances. Just because somebody has the Tangaloa family, they say, "Oh, this is the origin of Polynesia." There's so many factors that play into it, that it's not just because they still use that name. They're still using that name because the family chooses so, but it doesn't mean that it's the origin of Tangaloa. So that's just my thoughts. My thoughts there, because I know they've
Yeah.
kind of presented that many times.
Yep. So let me see here. We're gonna skip a lot of these. We're gonna go to the last one. We're gonna end with this. Um, let me see here. What's the last video here? Right. Let's end with this one. Let's end with this video, and we'll call it good here, and go to our next one, because this was another checkmate video that he said.
Hmm.
This one's just gonna destroy us, Mussy. So be prepared. This is gonna be painful for you.
Tonga's royal family and chiefly lineages originate from Samoa. This deep Samoan heritage and influence is still evident today in many aspects of Tongan culture, including its traditions, ceremonies, and social structures. King George Taufa'ahau Tupou I is one of the most important and transformative figures in Tongan history. He is considered the father of modern-day Tonga, having skillfully navigated European political pressures and maintaining Tonga's independence. In his letters to Christian missionaries, King George wrote about his travels to Samoa and the origin point of the Tui Tonga family. Dated January 6, 1843, he wrote,
Dear friends, I, George, having just returned from Samoa, think proper to inform you of the reason of my voyage there and the cause of my interfering with the people of Samoa. The relationship of Tonga and Samoa people has been of old. From Samoa sprang our progenitors, or ancestors, the governing families of Tonga as the family of Tui Tonga and Tui Kanokupolu, the latter being the family of Tupou, king of Tonga, and of George, king of Vavau and Hapai, which is the same with the chief Mumui. They are still as their children and one with them.
To this day, Tongan royal tradition holds that members of the monarchy can only marry other Tongan royals and nobility or high-ranking Samoans. In fact, Samoan chiefly lines, especially from Upolu and Manua, are acceptable and even desirable for maintaining the purity of the royal bloodline. This Samoan royal heritage is solidified even in the Tongan language and social structure. Futahelu, a renowned Tongan philosopher and founder of Atanisi Institute in Tonga, wrote in his book,
As far as Tongan culture is concerned, human beings are never born equal in dignity and rights. It's not at all unusual, in fact, it is quite common, to hear common people referred to by chiefs as manu, animals, the favorite species identified with the lower orders being pu'aka, swine. This characteristic of Tongan culture is crystallized in language with its three tiers, one for the monarch, one for the chiefs, and one for commoners. The regal or royal language is largely of borrowed terms, mainly from Samoa, that for chiefs consists of rhetorical construction, whilst the language for commoners is made up entirely of derogatory terms for animals and animal behavior. To give an example, the royal term for child is a lo, which is the formal poetical word for womb, and the chiefly terms are foha, son, and ofefine, daughter. But the formal term for a commoner's son or daughter is uhiki, animal young.
In addition, many of the Tongan dances and chants are also from Samoa.
I invite you now to enjoy some of these important traditional performances, for they say much about the heart of the Tongan people and their magnificent heritage.
The most frequently performed large group dance in Tonga is the Ma'ulu'ulu of Samoan origin. The universal dance in Tonga is the Tau'olunga, originating from the Samoan Tau'alunga.
The translations here are funny.
The kava or ava ceremony also is of Samoan origin.
This is an article taken from the Pacific Islands Monthly in 1967, speaking about the ancient Polynesian rituals of the Tongan coronation. It begins with the Samoan influence in the Dao Mafakava ceremony. Before Tonga was united under King George Tupou I in 1845, the Dao Mafakava ceremony took place only on the western side of the island of Tongatapu. It reads, The taumafakava, first used in the 17th century, reflects a Samoan influence. Nata, the first Tui Kanokupolo, had a Samoan mother, and the major part of his installation at the same kokatri was conducted by Samoan chiefs and attendants.
Wait, you don't write anything down after
Oh,
conversations?
This is
Commercial break.
Commercial break. Skip. Oh, that was it.
Oh,
That was the
that
end
was
right
it.
there. Whew. What are your thoughts, Mr. Altero? We'll close out this segment.
I think I'll just reiterate what we've kind of mentioned before. That letter from Dubo the First. Remember, that was to go and help the his relatives in Ha'amoa with trying to with the church, right? With the Wesleyan church, and because he was the only one able to write, no one in Ha'amoa was able to write, and he was able to create that. And what he said is the Ha'amoa were good women given to the Tuitonga and the Tuikangpolu to produce offspring. So I mean that's what we've kind of broke down with the progenitors coming from Ha'amoa, from the womb of the mother, but the father has always been from the Tuitonga, Tuihatagalawa, and the Tuikangpolu has been Tonga Tapu males or Tongan fathers from Tonga Tapu. So um, that's just my thoughts there. And that was a very political time that a lot of people, even Ha'amoa, wouldn't understand, and because they've never had a unified archipelago to even understand some of the nuances that Tupo the First was doing. Um, with the whole performances of the Taulunga saying it's Samoan origins. We had Mirika Pushiaki, like I mentioned before. There's there's a variation of the Taolunga, and I'm leaning towards that. And the performances of way, especially if you're gonna perform for the Tuitonga or people for high rank, it is gonna be the closer to how the people from Mua on how they do it is gonna be the more correct way, which is different from the other parts that have more closer like Ha'amoa, like Upolu and stuff. So that's my thoughts there. I don't know what they're trying to say that it's really difficult to try to say it originate here when it's kind of used throughout all Polynesia as being one people. So that's kind of my thoughts there. With the Kava stuff, um, we've disputed that because their Kava ceremony is on the houses, and that's a very simple description of how they do their ceremonial kava, where the taumafa kava and even the furitaunga of how the tuitonga and even the current Dupo family of the taumafa kava practice the kava protocols is after the astronomical knowledge, which is a lot more complex than your typical kava ceremony in Ha'amoa. It's very easy to understand, not as complex, and it's not as I mean, everyone's seen it. You've seen a kava ceremony in Ha'amoa it's a lot more simpler than the Tongan one. When you bring the tama kava, you break it down, you do certain moves, you count everything before you do the kava. How can it? I don't. It's really difficult to kind of say it came from there when it's more of the other way around. And why would you say that when you know the birth of the Polynesian heritage origin is from Tonga before going spreading out to the other islands? I mean, his one is just used from words, and I know he used um videos, and it's like broken up. I hope this gentleman does a podcast. He can put a face to what he suggests. It's very he's
I've
just
invited
breaking
him.
out,
I invited him. I
and he
invited
hasn't.
him.
Yeah,
I invited him, said, you can come. Nainoa Thompson can come. Your professor with his PhD Can come. Anyone can come on the
Beautiful.
podcast. We would love to
Beautiful.
have you.
It's hard to kind of debate when you've thrown little segments here and there and not have a face to kind of use your own words and provide your own historical um, backings to certain events. He's just using like little highlights here and there, which is we've already debunked multiple times. And you've already invited him, Tua. We'll see if he comes. I highly doubt it. He's one of the ones that just likes to be in the background and put highlights for his narrative and not put a face to it. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts there, Tua.
Yeah, we'll get through some of the comments here. Slick Rick says youth football. Tonga versus Samoa, catch it live Saturday. That's going to be fun. I think this is a good thing, right?
Okay, is that the one in California?
Yeah, I
Slick
think it's
Rick,
the
is that
one in California. I think, yeah.
awesome?
And
Let's
it's
go.
by 5 Star Entertainment LLC. Support our kids, even the Philippines, where Taulango Vaca resides. Okay. Yeah, but definitely a big fan of that. We'll support that. I think that's great. It's a great event there.
Initiative, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Kind of
It's
create some like a state of origin kind of
that'd
thing.
be
We want
great.
some. That'd be awesome. And that's one thing I would like to do, man. That's an idea. If most likely those NFL guys aren't listening or something, but man, California, wherever you went to state high school, have a team and have play each other. You went to high school in California and the high schools in Hawaii all have a team and have like a state of origin. That would be pretty thick because I just watch. I'm kind of in the state of origin mood because the Blues. I was rooting for the Blues to win, and they won the game 3
They
last
smashed them.
night. Yeah, so I mean, something like that would be cool and kind of create some excitement, So
Yeah.
I'm glad the Tonga versus Samoa kind of thing is going on with the football.
Yeah, I think that could be a interesting opportunity there. And then Talangi says this video is crazy, 100%. I'm just gonna
Very
try
crazy,
and
Talangi. We're on the same
yes, same page
wave
there.
there. Yeah.
100% number one, very mediocre. This video, number
Mediocrity
one,
right there.
saying that I'll just touch on the ones that are coming to mind here. Tuikan Kupolu never had a Taumafakava. So to say
Correct.
that's when it started, it was just a Ilokava, right? The
Correct.
Taunga was just for the Tuitonga. Laufiri Tonga was the one who gave the Taumafakava
Correct.
to Tupo the first. So that's the first thing you got to realize there. The languages, we already did the study on the languages, right? On the languages, the language that's closest to the Proto-Polynesian original language, according to that study, is Tongan. The Tongan language and all the Samoic languages that are related to everything else, they grouped them together because they were the ones who changed the most, right? And it's probably going back to what you said, Masi, because of colonization, right? Because of colonization, that's why that language changed so much, and that's the driver behind that. The dances, you already talked about it, Milika. The only thing I'll add to it is the fact that people don't understand it, why Tongans introduced or used Samoan dances to reintroduce the Tongan dances is the same reason why Tonga was not colonized and everybody else was colonized, because it's nuances. It's nuances of understanding how do we navigate the political environment and the social environment to introduce Samoan dances, but that's how it's kind of like a heriaki, right? That's how you present one thing and bring in your traditional dances. And if anyone opposes you, you can say, oh, but it's a Samoan dance, so don't worry about it. Just like Maui Tekelangi joked, oh, it's a tuikan upolu, it's flesh from upolu. You don't need to worry about it, right? Because it's the tuitonga and the tuihatakalawa. It's political maneuvering that are nuanced, and if you don't understand it, well, that's why you got colonized, unfortunately. The other part too about the letter, that's also political posturing and maneuvering, because you got to remember when Tupou the first goes to Samoa to kind of deal with that situation with the missionaries there, the European powers are like, what are you doing? right? Why are you interfering in this whole separate island group? And Tupou the First is trying to establish that there are legitimate reasons for them to get involved because it's the same family, right? It's familial ties. It's the same thing that Maafu tried to do with Fiji. He tried
Yeah.
to do the same thing to say, "Hey,
This is Tongan land.
this
Yeah.
is Tongan land. This is there's blood connections here, and
Yeah.
so you should include this under the protection of Tonga and have that there." But Tupou the First is like, no, that
No, thank
puts
you.
the motherland at risk. We're not going to do that. But it's the same concept. It's the same idea. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's what we're trying to do. And at the end of the day, we've debunked almost every single thing that comes out in that video.
Yeah.
So,
I just had a
yes,
thought, Tua. Just had a
yes.
thought, right? I'm just thinking. See, this is the this is the thing I want people to kind of understand some of the maneuvering. And Tonga's used, Tonga's been doing the maneuvering many times. Started from the Tuitonga being peaceful with being the most knowledgeable and people intermarrying with them, and then them maintaining power. And at times they had to use military force, right? When the colonization stuff happening, I'm telling you, no one was doing the Taurunga at that time. Everyone was focusing on maintaining sovereignty and trying to unite under the leadership in Tonga. But right, so maybe Samoa was still practicing the tattooing and families still doing the tattooing and dances here and there. But guess what? The Europeans were there with the ships slowly eating and colonizing their lands. See the difference? When you're not able, when you don't have the blood and leadership for thousands of years to adapt and pivot when you need to and park things on the side, then you people are thinking that, "Oh, okay, this is the origin that we have it here," and they never knew that we've just parked it here and there, having a variety of this way because we were focused. The families that were traditional holders for this had to park their skills and try to show their support, and show their leaderships that to unify the country to withstand the colonization. So I think a lot of people don't understand that some of the difficulty that people had to do in order to maintain sovereignty, and it's hard. It's going to be hard for me to explain that to many people because yeah, if you don't have it and you don't know what it feels like to grow up from indigenous leadership from the time of your ancestors stepping foot on the land till now, yeah, it's very difficult because a lot of them have only experience of recent history of being told by other non-indigenous people or foreign people what to do and how you should view your history. So, you know, it's just this is just a small part trying to rediscover our true history of our ancestors. So that's just my thoughts there.
Not 100%. And this is one of the things I think maybe we're coming up on hour number 2. I didn't realize this thing was gonna go for 2 hours from us. So maybe we'll save the other parts here for later. And maybe like you said, Mussy, we pivot. Maybe we will close out with, since we've been spending all this time on messages from someone who was a little upset with us, and we'll end with a positive message, right? Here was someone who sent us a message that says, "I want to thank you to all the hard work that Vita Fale is performing from an indigenous Polynesian perspective. The Vita Fale's work shouldn't be disregarded, but it should be included in the history of Tonga and for an open debate regarding ancient Polynesia. So many Samoans are so filled with pride that the idea of the Tu'imanua Empire existed never came to my mind. My dad always said Tonga has always been an independent kingdom since ancient times, and our Tongan ancestors used to rule the majority of the South Pacific." Then he pointed to the Tu'itonga Empire and Mu'a. When I mentioned the Tu'imanua Empire, he said It never existed, and it was never told in our history class or by our ancestors. My dad said, I never heard of the Tu'imanua Empire. If it did ever exist, it would have been mentioned in our Tongan history, but it wasn't. One thing I also wanted to mention, when you were talking, when the Europeans went to Samoa and saw all the navigators and called Samoa the Navigators Island, you said the bigger boats or the bigger canoes were more likely there were Tongans because the Tongans are the international travelers. This part made sense because my dad told me our Tongan ancestors will navigate the seas to many other islands such as Fiji, Samoa, and many more. Also, he mentioned we have Samoan ancestors due to intermarriages and with the bloodline of the Tu'itonga, the Tu'ihatakalaua, and the Tu'ikanupolu dynasty. My dad always said to me he was told our ancestors came from South America. If he was still alive, I would have told him about your hard work. He would be so happy to know the telling of our history according to our Tongan ancestors' perspective. Keep up the good work and keep going. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Malo.
Closing thoughts as we close this out for
Hey,
today,
I mean,
this
you know,
live digital kava session.
yeah, and that's just part of the little contribution that the Polynesian Eyes is doing for all Polynesians throughout the world is to try to understand our history and have open discussions. This is just a platform for that. And of course, when we have the discussion, of course, it's going to be respectful and a meaningful way that we can still get our points across and have a respectful discussion. We're grown up adults. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a comment that one of the viewers shared, and that's awesome. And that's what we encourage everyone to do is to listen to what the oral histories are out there, because there is a lot. And at the end of the day, do your individual research and come to the conclusion on who has the most accurate version of our Polynesian history. So that's just my thoughts there. Do and thank that person for sharing. And that's awesome. That's included with many other people who've shared through the messages and through the comments, which we get a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, 100%. And like you were saying, both of these comments, we get a lot of messages. These are indicative of kind of like both sides of the aisle, so to speak, on those who are kind of push back against us and those who support us. The reality is we like both. We invite both. We are here to drive discussion. We want ideas to compete, right? Like
Yes.
that's why we have live digital kava sessions. This is where we come to have ideas compete, and we're willing. It doesn't have to always be a debate. We're willing to have people on here, and if you just want to talk through your position, your belief, your evidence, we're more than willing to do that, right? If you want to have a back and forth, we're more than willing to do that. And if we
Yeah.
just want to have a get to know you and your history and your background, more than willing to do that. So really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here, to engage, and really just want to say, as always, invitation is open.
Yeah.
If there's someone who's willing to come and talk to us, we will always say yes. We don't shy away. We earnestly believe this to be the strongest position. And believe it or not, just like this gentleman here who shared the last message, and even the gentleman who was against us, they say, "Oh, I'm half Tongan, half Samoan." We were all one people, right? We were all one people. We were doing everything. We were together. Colonization has caused a little bit of a challenge. And what is that challenge? It kind of separated us. And for Tonga, Tonga was so focused on trying to survive. That history that was within Tonga was in a black hole, so to speak,
Yeah.
for hundreds of years. Our brothers and sisters out there, we're not saying that you guys did this on purpose. You guys were doing the best you were trying to do. with colonization that was going on, sharing that story, that history. But Tonga is now in a position where that history can be put on the table for all of our brothers and sisters to consider. You hear it, listen, look at the evidence, whether it's oral history, whether it's genealogical history, whether it is archaeological history, whether it is DNA, scientific, just common sense too. It all makes sense there. Take a look at it. We want to introduce more people, more ideas. So we'll continue to keep doing what we do. And we want to say thank you to all our supporters. We will stay here as long as the desire and the ability continues to move forward. But those are my closing thoughts. And as always, we say, be bold. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, but always, always stay curious. Till next time, peace.
Peace. See ya.